Mr. Auditor, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Loudermilk. Ms. Alsop.
Here.
Ms. Wager.
Here.
Mr. Thacker.
Here.
Ms. Thies.
Here.
Mr. Norris.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Okay, thank you. The councilperson Loudermilk did text me and say he would not be here tonight, out of town, so thank you for that, all present other than that. So next one would be communication, elected officials, other officials or agencies of the county. Yes. Yes. That's pretty quick. He didn't even start to say anything yet. Yes. Yes. Oh, wasn't aware of that. Well, that would be, as you were talking about that, I know you're not supposed to do it, but that was the first thing I was thinking about is what are we committing to financially, which is our only part. So is that something that we would be able to, they could communicate to us? I mean, because I don't know what that number would be. If it's not 41,000, what they said we would be committing to for juvenile, I don't have the number for general.
You're probably talking about 2 employees, you know, with benefits and salary. Yeah, you'd probably be talking somewhere in the $120,000, $130,000 range, I would guess. And I could, I mean, that's a gross estimate on my part, so, you know, but I will clarify that before next week's meeting.
Anybody else have questions on, because I know Marie told me at the beginning of the meeting she wasn't going to ask any questions tonight.
Hey, I didn't know this was coming. So is there, I mean, any kind of guidelines on how much or like how many days they have to be in one
Oh,
quarter?
it would be a full-time position.
But I mean, as far as like, could they still could help with juvenile?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah, you do
so,
all juvenile.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought. If they just
Yeah.
got assigned to juvenile, it'd be no difference. It's just that they have the capability of doing all of
To,
the other.
okay.
that's right, that's right. General jurisdiction
technicality.
includes
Okay.
juvenile. So it, I'm sure that would be their primary task. But the thought, I believe, was our problem really is showing itself in juvenile court, so let's ask for a second juvenile magistrate.
Right.
And I think that was the guidance they had gotten from the Supreme Court, because they thought that there wasn't the necessity of proceeding to the legislature to get that approval. And upon further inquiry with, as I understand it, their own Supreme Court counsel, they determined that it would be inappropriate for any county to get a second juvenile magistrate. So the request came back through Judge Mulligan to modify that request.
And it makes
to-
it more
Yeah.
flexible too. I mean, there is that option. We've talked about cases going through. So, okay, as long as there's not like any, like, 60-40 split or anything
No.
crazy like that. Okay.
No.
Okay.
And then you will update us on more information.
Yes.
Update us more information next week. Okay.
Yes.
Mark, did you say you wanted to talk about the under elected official? Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Just wanted to give you a little update on the demo of the old jail. So last Thursday was the bid opening. We had three bids for the road construction, the access road to the north of the courthouse. And I've included this, all these minutes in your packets there. We had 5 people bid on the demolition of the project. Currently, it looks like McGuire Excavating was a low bidder for the earthwork and the drive. And it appears that Dorn Associates at the time were the low bidder for the demolition. This is approximately $1.2 million under our projected budget for those items. This week, Garmong is going over interviews with the low bidders and the next low bidder. And through this process, they will make sure that all vendors included everything that we asked to include, and that all will meet RBO requirements. Yes.
That was one of the questions I got asked about.
Correct, yes,
That they
and
will all
they all will on both of these projects.
Okay.
Right now, the building below the tower is pretty much ready to go. They're going to power the building down on September 16th. Late this month, we are going to let the Terre Haute Police Department do some explosives training in the basement, similar to what they did at the old Terre Haute Police Station. They will sign waivers and everything else for all that, with hope to start the actual demolition the 1st of October.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Mr. Flinkenbeer? So I wish I would have taken a dollar bet on that.
I
mean,
know.
she's
So
the
far I'm
one
up-
that
so
she
far I'm up to 2.
Brought it to me, no, I didn't bring it.
Are we still on the drive in particular in this space? Are we still keeping in mind, and maybe this is a question for whoever oversees this, keeping in mind the turn to the river and what the city
Yes.
has done with the parking lot?
Yes,
Because I
we've
hate to redo anything like that.
No,
so.
we've included them in conversations and some preliminary designs, so now we will keep that in mind so that maybe they can do whatever in the future.
Right.
Right now, we don't include anything as far as what they're wanting in that design, because that
Right,
could be
it's just
very
make it
pricey.
flexible for when they add on
Correct.
to it or do it. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, because I hate to put something in and then tear it all out.
No,
you know,
no,
a few years
we'll
later.
keep all that in mind. Just so you know, it's also going to have additional handicap spots. It's going to have parking spots for the vans that come down, the sheriff's department, and our maintenance in that road.
Okay, and I appreciate that. We talked about the handicap spots. I appreciate that.
Yep.
I see that there's somebody from the audience had a question. Do you mind taking a question from the audience, Mark?
Oh, sure.
I just want to know who's good.
You need to, if you could come up to the mic, please. I'm getting coached from the sidelines here.
Hi.
State your name and.
My name's
and,
Trent Short.
Okay.
I just want to know, so the RBO is going to be enforced? Who's going to enforce it? I mean, what's the penalty if it's not? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything
Okay.
else?
Anybody else from council have a question for Mr. Klingbear? Thank you for these minutes. I know today when I was at the commissioners meeting, you guys said you would share these, so thank you.
Yeah, David, I think David had.
Oh, David has a question? Okay.
Yeah, were we planning on the bid package number 2 there, keeping as much of that local as we could?
Bid package number 2.
Well, it looks like that Door and Associates.
Yeah, Door and Associates.
I don't know
Door and Associates, in our preliminary interviews, are probably not going to be the one that we chose because they did not submit everything that was needed. And they are not prepared to abide by the RVO.
Okay.
So that's
Good to know.
where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very preliminary. They're just interviewing all these people right now to make sure that they comply with everything.
Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, I was right. What did you say, Mike? I didn't hear it.
This is just all very preliminary.
Okay, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
okay.
true, thank you.
Wanted to say that once we turn the lights out that place, that we're going to save probably $4,000 a month in electricity, $1,500 to $2,000 a month in gas, $600-700 a month in water. Don't know what we're using water for over there yet. Same amount in sewage, and so we'll have cost reduction finally in utilities.
Anybody else? Thank you for the update on that. So, not,
Can I get a copy of the bid results? I've asked for that.
you can have mine. Yeah, there's Aaron's is right there.
I got it.
He won't mind it. Not to omit anybody, but is there any other elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county that would like to speak at this time? Before I move on. Okay, report from committees. So, only committee I know that's being active at this time is the Budget Committee.
Budget Committee has a meeting on Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, just continuing meeting of the annual Budget Committee, reviewing budget.
Questions for the Budget Committee before we move on? Okay, thank you. Resolutions and ordinances other than appropriations. The first one we have is agreement to establish approved uses of the Sheriff's Office Commission, commissary funds outside the set allowance and state statute. And what we have here, for those of you that are on the appendix, if you look at that, that's going to be the page 4 on our information.
Good evening.
Sheriff Fell.
Derek Fell, Sheriff of Eagle County. So what I have before you, as I sent a few weeks ago now, basically there are about 8 items that can be, the commissary can spend out of, according to statute. And there's a variety of items. And there's a 9th item that basically says it benefits the sheriff's office and that's mutually agreed upon by the county fiscal body and the county sheriff. So what you have in front of you are basically a list of items that we are asking for approval to spend out of the commissary account. The whole goal of this is, again, for betterment of the sheriff's office, whether that be some type of community involvement, community engagement, Could be something as simple as, fixing or repairing equipment, sometimes buying new equipment, and obviously as well as lowering requests for spending taxpayer dollars. This is no request for additional funds from the county. This is all a request for approval to spend commissary money that's generated through inmate funds.
Yes, this is, and I would concur that you did send this out to us. I think everybody received that email, but this being, of course, the formal presentation of it. So would anybody have any questions for, regarding this for our sheriff? Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Can we get back on the mailing list for the commissary account?
Absolutely, yes. It's twice a year, I believe.
Yes.
Twice a year, correct? Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
I've gotten a couple, but it's been a while.
Yep, not a problem.
Was it January, or did we get one in July? Is that what the last one we got? Is it June? I was thinking
I
that's
thought
the
it was
last
June.
one that
And
was
then
sent out.
like the end of the year,
January,
first
June.
part of the year for the last.
Okay, very good. Okay, hearing no questions, then we'll take action on this next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next item, number 2, Resolution 2024-13, resolution of the County Council of Vigo County, Indiana express interest to purchase of specified real estate and appointing appraiser. I believe that's you guys, the commissioners here.
Good evening, council. You folks have a map that Mark printed off for you guys today. It's 21 acres behind the Vigo County Security Center. I believe Mr. Thacker made a recommendation for us to speak to the folks that own the property to the north. There are several lots there. We did have fruitful conversations with them, but ultimately decided that that property was going to be out of the county's price range, just from some preliminary conversations with some real estate folks. But we do have the opportunity to buy the 21 acres to the south of the security center. There's been conversation over the last year, and some of you sit on the JRAC committee with Mr. Wilson from the Community Corrections, possibly an expansion of Community Corrections, possibly in the future an expansion of Juvenile Justice Center or something like that. We do not want to be landlocked where we are now at the security center, so we would like to move forward with at least seeking appraisals for the 21 acres to the south of the security center. This is all owned by S&G Excavating. Most of it's farm field. There's a southeast portion, just about 100 by 100 foot square, that's in a flood zone. Mr. Steiner did say he would move some of that dirt that's on the property now to bring that out of the flood zone. But he will take that dirt elsewhere and use it if we do acquire this property later down the road. We're not here today requesting any money to move forward with any projects or anything like that, just seeking appraisals so we can continue the ball rolling in the right direction if we want to move forward purchasing that property later this year or early next year.
Oh, thank you. And what about questions? Anybody have questions for Commissioner Schweitzer? So on this, David, did you have a question? Okay. On this property they have, it's in 2 separate tracks, right?
Yep.
And then both of those tracks, do they extend all the way to 63? Is that safe to assume?
Yeah, they do,
I thought
but
they did, but I just wanted.
Mr. Steiner would like to be able to keep the piece of property, their small parcel right there with a home on it.
Okay.
So we'll just have basically an entry from 63 back to that property.
That's where that shows it to the south.
There is a Duke Energy substation all the way to the east. There's a number 04 right there. It's a small substation. We would likely have an opportunity for an access way to Johnson Avenue along Duke Energy's easement there, if we wanted that as well. And then, of course, access from the security center too.
Do you have an estimate on these appraisals, what you would need if you're here asking for appraisal? Do you need $1? Do we need to assign a dollar amount to that? We don't? I didn't know.
Mr. Steiner would like to keep that kind of between the council and the commissioners this time.
You mean, are you talking about?
No,
the
I'm
price?
talking about the cost of the appraisal
yeah, I
work,
mean, they're
not the
usually-
cost of the land, no.
Yeah, no, but,
Yeah, they're like $1,500.
Okay,
yeah, as long as they've got,
Yeah.
professional services and, yeah, their
Okay.
line items and budget, they could use to
So
pay for that.
you're not asking for that today because you already have that then?
We already have that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you for information.
Yep.
Okay, item number 3, resolution of reallocation of existing appropriations 2024-14 Juvenile Justice Center. And this one is on our page 12. And we have the executive director.
Mr. President, members of the council,
Yes.
I'm asking for money that's been appropriated previously in the budget in the food line item of $38,000 to be transferred into a vehicle line item. We have a 2011 Crown Vic that was handed down from the sheriff's office several years ago. It's got over 122,000 miles on it. It wobbles when you drive it. There's no restraint system or separation system for the detainees to be separate from the officers, so that presents a safety risk. There's no cameras in the vehicle. So a few years ago, 2021, we purchased a brand-new Dodge Durango XST, I think is what it was called. Yeah, and this time, we're not getting a new one. We're going to save about $9,000 by getting a used one. So it's a one-year-old 2023 with 22,000 miles on it. Going to be purchasing it from Eastgate Dodge, which is on the north side of Indianapolis. The money that would be transferred would also go to pay for some WeatherTech mats for the vehicle, for the prisoner transport restraint system, a video monitoring system, which we have in the other vehicle now, and window tinting, because whenever we transport juveniles, the fact that they're incarcerated is confidential. So we have to tint the windows. So we're trying to get rid of a vehicle that's been around for a long time, and we've got a little extra money we think we have to do that. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We still have enough money to pay for kidneys too, right?
Yep, we hope so. I think we need about $20,000 for the end of the year, and between the non-reverting fund, we have some money in there, about 15 grand, and then what's remaining in this, we should have enough money to cover us for the remainder of the year.
So when, I just wanted to reiterate to everybody too, so when this conversation came about, we had questions and we talked with the auditors, and because this is a transfer, out of series transfer, it did not have to be advertised, so we were able to get it on the budget and present it here today, so we could act on this as well.
Yes. I'd remind the council also that in 2021, we did the exact same thing.
Yes.
We took money from the food line item, moved into vehicles to purchase the Durango that we have now that we use mainly for those transports. But there are times, and it is what it is, where we have multiple transports the same day or even the same time. And so just last week, we had someone going to Indianapolis and someone going just to Sullivan. But they had to stop twice on the way to Sullivan, let the vehicle rest to get the kid to a doctor's appointment down there. So it's kind of important that maybe we have some vehicles that we can count on.
And today, you're still not running on shortage of detainees at the.
Yeah, we're at 23 right now.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. If not, we will see you next week.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, item number 6 is, agenda item 6 is ordinance relating to appropriation first reading. Number 1 is additional appropriation ordinance 2024-72, parks payroll services. This is on page 18.
Adam Grossman, Superintendent, Vigo County Parks. This is to do with the HO5 funds. Cheryl, did you send your version of what I sent? That's what we listed, is that correct? Advertised, I guess is the right word.
On page 2.
I did, but it's on their advertisement for the additional.
Okay. So,
So
The
page
actual-
18 is the letter, and then page 2 has the breakdown, right? What,
Actually, 25, it's the actual breakdown, because what he had requested in the letter was just the amount of the stipend, and we had to add the FICA and the PERF to it, because you have to pay FICA and PERF on it.
Yes.
So the actual additional appropriation is $9,939. But between the two stipends, it's $8,151. So you will have an additional appropriation, and you will have a salary ordinance amendment behind it. So page 26 is his salary ordinance amendment to the stipend amounts. So now they're directed to where they're at, so you can
Okay,
talk to them.
thank you, thank you. It's been a confusing process for me. This is a first, so, this has to do with the HFI funds. I believe it was the June meeting, $30,198, through HFI for the, biking program. That's kind of spun us into hyperdrive here for programming and youth programming. But a part of that was stipends. The other question I would have, and I don't know if this is the right time for that or not, but that $30,198 currently sits in contractual services 1161. So I'm not sure if the vote next week would be to transfer those funds to payroll and the remaining into our contractual. Does that make sense?
You'll just have to do an additional at the contractual.
Okay,
You're doing the salary went down.
right,
There won't be a transfer. The salary, when you just received the revenue went to the park fund. So this is gonna be appropriated to allow you to spend those funds.
okay,
So that's what you're doing for the salaries, the stipend today. The rest, if he wants to put in contractual, we'll do an additional into park fund contractual.
yeah, that would be the remaining. That will purchase bikes and AV equipment and different things of that nature for programming.
Does anybody have any questions for the Park Superintendent? Adam? Go ahead, third time?
I'm done. This, though, once the grant's gone, these stipends
Right.
will go too.
that's
This is just for
Or if
the
we get to midpoint
implementation.
next year, or whatever, if we get to midpoint, it goes away in that situation as well. If
Okay.
HFI funds go away, it goes away.
And so the rest of that funding will be used for the purchase of like bikes and
Right.
what we talked about, expanding that community program.
Rich has got, he's working with Trek, I believe it is, right now.
Ooh,
We got
nice.
$18,000 worth of bikes on hold right now, so they're ready to go. We've got AV and things. We're having temporary programming locations until we can get our building built. Working with Purdue Extension and a few different individuals to get those kids out early, since we got some funds early, and trying to get those kids out there, get them learning before the building gets here.
So all different sizes of bikes, though, for
Yeah.
different ages? Okay. Big kids to little kids? Oh, wow, okay, that's actually pretty good for track. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I think everybody probably also received from the parks some exciting pictures that
Yes.
they sent out to us, and it was shared on Facebook of the cabins that arrived and will be going in for rental for the 25 season.
Yep, those came out really well. I think those are gonna be coveted sites next year. Thanks to the
Right.
commissioners and everybody for the use of ARP money to be able to get that done, or a majority of. But the rental wagon, both cabins be available next year, and all of them be fought over. So,
Yeah. Very good.
thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next is ordinance as additional appropriation 2024-73 edit. This is for the Honey Creek Conservatory.
Back again, good evening again, council. So I'm just up here to kind of preface this, and then Mr. Manning and his team's going to take over from here. So the commissioners have had the opportunity to work with Honey Creek Conservancy for the past 2 or 3 years, trying to get them over the hump to get some things done in southern Vigo County. As you're all well aware, last year, Commissioner Clinchbeard Morris and I had a concern with FEMA, who did some mapping and overlaid some subdivisions up on the north side of town that weren't in a flood zone. They labeled them as a flood zone. It took the help from former Senator John Ford to work with the DNR to get those out of the floodplain. So we got that taken care of. But this instance, this southern portion of the county has been in a floodplain for several years. We talked about this at our budget meeting with the budget committee, that we were going to bring the Honey Creek Conservancy here for a $200,000 ask out of edit. They need some help getting some walls repaired, some drainage ditches repaired, things of that nature. What we will have is the opportunity to lift several thousand Vigo County residents in the southern part of the community out of a flood zone and do away with that flood insurance, while also allowing new construction of homes, commercial businesses, and things of that nature to not be required to have that flood insurance, also not have to have their building raised by 3 or 4 feet. We do have a home developer looking at property, potentially going to build on Spring Hill. Unfortunately, the upfront cost to raise their land to be able to build those buildings is astronomical with the current floodplain that's in place. So Honey Creek Conservancy has done a great job of addressing all the needs in southern Vigo County, and they have a short presentation. So thank you.
Hi, Council. I'm Parker Manning, representing the Honey Creek Conservancy District. On behalf of Craig McKee, he's our legal counsel, and he was unable to be here today. I've been a member of the Conservancy District since 2009 or 2010. The district was formed a little over 30 years ago. The handout that we provided to you is a kind of an overview of that district, the various mapping areas that fall within the Conservancy. We have been working for the last 6 or 7 years on submitting a letter of map revision to FEMA in hopes of getting all of this area revised, reduced flood rates, hopefully eliminating the requirement of having flood insurance. That was the entire purpose of this district. Much of the work was done 25 years ago, so we've had to go back, and we're in the process now of spending about $550,000 to make some corrections, make some repairs, do some work to fit the current standards. On top of that project, there are some other areas that our engineering firm has noted could end up being a concern when FEMA does review our request. The major issue, there's about 20 flap gates that dump into Thompson Ditch that need new piping. The gates need replaced. We need concrete head walls to bring those up to the proper specification that we anticipate FEMA is going to require. It's been a very extensive project. We've used Christopher Berg for 20 plus years at this point in time. I brought a representative with me who has been working on the project with us for several years, that would like to take a few minutes and run through these illustrations and give you a brief explanation. It doesn't appear as if the PowerPoint technology is going to work, so we gave everybody a paper handout. If I could, I'd like to introduce AJ Fricke with Christopher Burke Engineering. AJ.
Thank you, Parker, for the introduction, and good evening, Council. I'd like to present to you some more information on the proposed letter of map revision for the Honey Creek Vigo Conservancy District, and I'll walk through this presentation that you have in front of you. On the second slide, you'll see a few topics that I'd like to discuss today. First, an overview of the levee system so that you know which areas specifically we are discussing. Second, the existing flood insurance rate mapping. Third, an overview of the current letter of map revision, or LOMR project. Fourth, the proposed flood insurance rate mapping contingent upon a successful project. And then what Parker talked about, the two items that we're working on right now, the levee raise project and the Thompson Ditch outfall maintenance, which are intended to help us achieve that LOMR. And then we'll let you know a little bit about the next steps of the project. So if you move to the next slide, there's a map that is showing an overview of the levee system. The Honey Creek Watershed levee system is comprised of approximately 12 miles of levees along Honey Creek, Thompson Ditch, and Jordan Ditch in southern Vigo County. The Honey Creek levees begin generally in the Allendale area on the east side of US 41 and continue west into the Oak Grove area near State Road 63. And the Thompson Ditch levees start near Erie Canal Road, continue downstream past 7th Street, US 41, and Spring Hill Road, and eventually tie into the Honey Creek levee system. Again, it's about 12 miles long. It's comprised of primarily earthen embankment levees. We also have some flood wall segments throughout, especially in the residential areas. If you'll go to the next slide, it is a depiction of the existing FEMA flood insurance rate mapping for the area. And what I'd like to point out are the blue areas. You will see a blue area that is in dark blue between Thompson Ditch and Honey Creek. That's on both the east and west sides of US 41. That is a special flood hazard area. That's specifically Zone AO. The lighter blue color that you see north of that zone, it is north of the Thompson Ditch levees. It's also in the western portion of the areas between the levees, and it's also difficult to see, but it's also in the Allendale area on the east side of 41, that light blue color. That is Zone AE. That is also a special flood hazard area. Those areas will be very important here as we get to the next slide. So the key takeaway here is there's a significant amount of residential and commercial property that is mapped in special flood hazard areas within the southern portion of the county. If you go to the next slide, we have some bullet points about the realities of this existing FEMA flood insurance rate mapping. And the first bullet point is that the current maps don't accurately reflect the flood risk. They don't accurately reflect the completed benefits of the levee system that the Honey Creek Vigo Conservancy District and the NRCS have constructed over the course of many years dating back to the 1990s. Those levees do provide flood protection for the community, but the maps do not reflect them. Secondly, as was mentioned earlier, for those who are living in the special flood hazard areas, they are subject to mandatory flood insurance purchase requirements if they have a federally backed mortgage. And then finally, the City of Terre Haute and Vigo County are participants in the National Flood Insurance Program, and they have ordinances that they must enforce as a participant. The ordinances specify that new construction or substantial improvements to existing structures must have their lowest floors raised 2 feet above the base flood elevation. That can be a development restriction. I've also cited specific sections of the Terre Haute City Code and the county ordinance for reference on this slide. If you go to the next slide, we have a brief overview of this letter of map revision project. Now, our overall goal is to revise the flood insurance rate maps for the community through the letter of map revision request to FEMA. This is a relatively high bar to clear. We must demonstrate that the levee meets the requirements of the Code of Federal Regulations, and we've got some engineering parameters that I've listed on here that I'm not going to go into detail tonight. But it is a relatively high bar to clear to demonstrate from a technical standpoint that the levees meet all the federal criteria. As Parker mentioned, the district has been working for many years and has made a significant investment in the amount of funds to achieve this goal to benefit the community. And we're getting really close to achieving that goal. So if you go to the next slide, I have another map that looks somewhat similar to the first map that I showed, but it is showing the proposed flood insurance rate mapping in the community. If you remember from that first graphic, you saw a lot of blue areas, which are special flood hazard areas. Under the proposed mapping, nearly the entire area between Thompson Ditch and Honey Creek, as well as the area between Thompson Ditch and Interstate 70 and the Allendale area would revert to a levee protected zone. You're seeing an orange crosshatch in that area representing those proposed zones. So effectively, that entire area would be remapped with a few exceptions from the special flood hazard area to a levee protected zone, recognizing the completion of the levees along Thompson Ditch and Honey Creek. So if you go to the next slide, we have some bullet points of what that means for us. The first is that there would be no mandatory flood insurance purchase requirements in those levee protected areas. That's a good thing for property owners, but we do want to point out that property owners are still encouraged to purchase flood insurance in levee protected areas, and lenders may still require it, but we're hopeful that it can be purchased at a lower rate. A successful LOMR would also result in elevating the lowest floor 2 feet above the base flood elevation, that requirement not being in effect in the county. So the requirements in the Terre Haute City Code and the county ordinances would not apply in these levee protected areas. That means there could be potential for economic development in those specific spots that are protected by the levees. So if you go to the next slide, we have some information about the timeline of our efforts. We've been working on the LOMR for many years, as Parker mentioned, but we did make a formal submission to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in April of 2022. We made some revisions based on some comments they provided and resubmitted in November of 22. They provided a comment letter in March of 23. And to summarize, we needed to do some maintenance and some minor improvements to the levee to meet the current requirements. One of those items was to raise the crest elevation or the height of the levee in a few small isolated areas to meet the current requirements. It was just a little bit short, so we needed to raise that crest elevation. So we're calling that the Levee Raise Project. The district has initiated the design and permitting and bidding of that. Construction is about to commence next week. The contractor is mobilized, and we expect completion of that project by the end of 2024 at a cost of about $550,000. The district has also initiated design of improvements to outfalls along Thompson Ditch. This is a needed maintenance project to ensure the reliability of the flood protection system. We estimate that cost is $150,000 to $200,000. We anticipate a resubmittal of the LOMR package to FEMA in early 2025. Just a few more slides here. Wanted to show just a few pieces of information about these projects. The next slide that you'll see is a map showing the levee system again. We wanted to point out which areas we were working on as part of these projects. It's probably a little bit hard to see at this scale, but the first area that we're working in is in Allendale. We're calling that project location number 1. So at the far east end of the Honey Creek levee system, there's a green line in the Allendale area. We're working on raising the levee crest elevation in that neighborhood. We have another spot that is where First Street crosses the Honey Creek North Levee. So the purple line on the north side of Honey Creek at First Street, that's a focus area for our project. And then finally, on the west end near State Road 63, in the Oak Grove area, we have a small portion of the levee that needs raised, and that's project location number 3. So we've got 3 locations along the Honey Creek levee that we're working on. Thompson Ditch levee, we're high enough in terms of the levee protection height. So the next 2 slides depict what we're doing from a technical standpoint. I won't get into a lot of detail unless it is desired. But you can see a picture of the existing levee, the earthen levee in the Allendale area on the right side of this photograph. And on the left, you can see an engineering sketch of what we're doing here to raise the levee crest elevation. So effectively, we're adding earthen embankment material to raise the height of that levee to the appropriate height to meet FEMA requirements. Most of the areas we're raising the levee a foot or so or less. So it's not a substantial lift, but it is important to meet the requirements. On the next slide, you'll see the work that is proposed for some of the flood wall segments within the community. The flood wall segments are generally close to residences where there are space constraints. So in the picture on the right is a picture of one of the flood walls in the Allendale area. The engineering sketch on the left-hand side is showing that the top portion of that wall is going to be removed, and then we're going to build it back higher. So we're going to dowel it in. We're going to make sure that the old and new are connected really well. We're going to build it up higher to meet the FEMA requirement of the elevation that is needed.
That's what I got.
On the next slide, you will see a graphic of the second project, which is the Thompson Ditch Maintenance Outfall Overview. I've highlighted an area in orange in the upper right corner of that graphic, upstream of 7th Street, between 7th Street and Erie Canal Road. That is our focus area for this project. If you go to the next slide, we have a photographic depiction of what we are proposing. Upstream of 7th Street, there are 20 storm sewer outfalls through the levees. Some are on the north side of the ditch, some are on the south side. And you can see in this left photo that the outfalls are cantilevered, they are sticking out into the ditch, and there's a device on the end of the pipe that's called a flap gate. The flap gate is in red in this picture, is painted red. And the purpose of the flap gate is to prevent water from Thompson Ditch or the flooding source from backing up into the protected area. And you can see in this photo that that flap gate is sitting open. That is due to the weight of that flap gate and the slope of the pipe. Most of the outfalls within the Honey Creek Watershed levee system look like what you see on the right. They have a concrete head wall. They have a flap gate that sits flush against there. It sits up tight. It creates a really nice seal to help prevent the water from the flooding source from backing into the protected area. This project proposes to retrofit the 20 outfalls that are upstream of 7th Street. They range in size from 12 inches to 36 inches, taking them from what you see on the left, a cantilevered outfall that's somewhat unreliable that sits open, to something that's more reliable on the right-hand side, is more consistent with the outfalls in the remainder of the levee system. To wrap up here with some conclusions, wanted to say that the LOMR for the Honey Creek Watershed levee system would certainly benefit the community. It would provide relief from mandatory flood insurance purchase requirements for those living in levee protected areas. It would provide relief from development restrictions, and it would provide a more accurate depiction of flood risk for the community on the FEMA flood insurance rate maps. The district has initiated this LOMR request, and we found out that we need to do some maintenance work and some improvements to finally get over the finish line. So we're in process of completing the levee raise project, and we're moving forward hopefully soon with the outfall maintenance project as well, hoping to resubmit back to FEMA in 2025. That was a very high-level overview, and I'm sure a lot of information to take in about our project. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, Vicki.
How long have you been working on this project?
Yes, this project initiated in 2013 with some small feasibility studies, and we have done numerous engineering studies for many years to try to gather all the information and analysis that's required to meet the FEMA guidelines.
And then what would you estimate the cost so far that you've spent on the project, and where did the funding come from?
Yes. We spent roughly $500,000 in engineering work over that time. That funding has come exclusively from the district.
From the
Parker, is that
taxpayers, yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And when you build on the top of that retaining wall, there, I think that's along around Allendale area maybe.
Yes.
Is that mortared bricks? How is that held together?
Yeah, so what you see on the outside face of that wall is decorative. So that the wall itself is more continuous, so to speak. So the brick on the outside is aesthetic
Got
only.
it. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Parker had another comment.
If I could just add something. So just to be clear, we have already moved forward with doing all of the necessary repairs and upgrades. This project that we're hoping to get some additional funding for is anticipation of what we expect FEMA to come back and tell us we need to have done in order for them to approve the letter of map revision. There's a chance that we go through and submit this and they completely reject it because of the outfalls are not meeting what we anticipate they're going to have as their requirements. So we're trying to plan ahead so that we can get this done as soon as possible. We're at a point now where we've had to spend a lot of taxpayer money over the years, and we can probably eventually fund this project, but it's just a function of additional tax dollars over additional years to come up with the $200,000. We're using most of our reserves at this point in time to fund the current project. Our hope is to get some additional funding and get this done in the very near future. I mean, there's still a chance they could even get started on it yet this fall. Obviously, weather's going to be an issue, but if it doesn't start this fall and we have the funding, it's definitely a project that we will start sometime late spring when the weather permits.
Can you estimate how much people are paying for flood insurance in this county?
I don't have those numbers. Do you know what that is, AJ?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It varies based on your elevation of your property and other factors, what zone you're mapped in being one of them. So it's really hard to say how much an individual is paying, but what we could do is we could provide some general data from national sources that may be of interest to you to help answer that
It'd just be interesting to see how much collectively this county is paying.
Yeah.
You know, the folks in this county are paying for flood insurance.
I-
It's gotta be humongous.
I think it's a big number, yes, but we have no data to really put to that.
And unfortunately, there's no way to know for sure when this project is done, how much of a discount or a reduction people might end up having in their flood insurance. Without a doubt that there will be a rate change, but every day that goes by, we've got more natural disasters, more flooding, which impacts all the future rates. So, you know, we could very possibly be in a spot where they don't see a major reduction in those rates, but they may not see a substantial increase moving forward, as they surely will with the situation we have right now.
How many outfalls need to be replaced? do
There's
you know?
20.
All
20.
need to be replaced?
Well, they need to be repaired and retrofitted. You know, we've run into some issues where over the years between mowing, you know, you'll have a mower hit one of those outfalls, it'll damage it. There's just been a multitude of issues that have come up. And I'm not, it was before my time when some of those were put in, so I'm not really sure why we have some that are encased in concrete and others that are not. But we're definitely in a spot where we can see that those concrete structures have held up very well and are definitely serving the purpose. Because right now, if we did have a flood event, if Thompson Ditch were to fill up with water, I mean, we're in a spot now where we would definitely get some water running back in subdivisions, which is just a bad situation. And hopefully something we can prevent.
So then you're talking about $200,000, you know, that's figure that you're hoping to
That's correct.
come up with?
Yes,
and
that's
you're-
our estimate as to what that cost will
And
entail.
you're standing here talking to us
Because we have spent the funding that we had set aside to do this project, not knowing that we were going to have to go back in and repair these floodgates. You know, this has been a timely process, and we have, you know, we can, as I mentioned, we can probably save enough money over the next 5 to 6 years by increasing tax rates and hopefully not having any more repairs to do this project within the Conservancy. But it's also a function of timing. If we can save 4 or 5 years and get this project done now, get the LOMR approved, it's going to save everybody a substantial amount of money. So time is the major issue along with the money.
and you think 200 grand will do it?
That's where AJ comes in. That's out of my league.
That's our best estimate at the present time.
So if I can ask a couple questions as well, so how much of this falls in the city limits? Because here we are, you're talking to the county, and you haven't approached the city for this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, but there, 7th Street, the Thompson Ditch area, that's all falls in the city, right?
The majority of the protected areas by the levee are in the county.
Yeah.
There are some areas that I believe are within the city limits, but my understanding that most of it is within the county.
And so a conservatory, the way I understand it is it's taxed for that area because they're the ones affected by that area and choose to live in that area.
That's
And-
correct.
And so if we here at the county, we make a if we do $200,000, it comes from the whole county general. So everybody in the county pays for that. Is that be understood?
But
So that was my question on that. And, you know, when you look through these pictures, anybody who would put a gate on a plastic culvert, that's a success for failure from the jump. Anybody that knows anything about it, you do that, you're going to end up just with what you have right there, a floodgate that doesn't work. So what if you do these improvements and you raise this, what can we expect to stand? An 8-inch rain in 24 hours, a 4-inch rain in 24 hours? Because 6, 7, 8, June the 7th in 2008, none of this worked.
Yeah. So the levee system is designed to provide flood protection for a 100-year event, which has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year.
And that's happened how many times in the last 10 years? 20?
Well, we haven't had one on Honey Creek or Thompson Ditch that I'm aware of. Certainly, June 2008 was a huge event
That was a 500-year
exceeded, yes, exceeded the system capacity. If something like that happened again, it would put this system to the test, because it's only designed to accommodate
a 100-year.
A 100-year event with some what we call freeboard or safety factors. So
Okay.
we set the levee, well, we didn't, but the designers did.
Right.
The federal government, NRCS designed the facilities. Set the elevation at the 100-year elevation, and then they add additional height to the levee. It's called freeboard. It's typically about 3 feet above the 100-year elevation.
Okay.
There are areas throughout the levee system that have more than 3 feet.
So a
additional
100-year
height.
is what kind of rainfall?
Depends on the duration. If you're talking a 24-hour storm duration, that's probably on the order of 7 inches in 24 hours, approximately.
Okay, very good. And then, so on this, so you said you have the money that you've generated, and then you guys generated, you're looking to do 550,000 plus another 200,000, so $750,000, and you're asking us for 200 of that.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had the numbers right.
Sure, and just a little follow-up. Having seen this firsthand, unfortunately, I lived in Allendale in 2008, stood there and looked at the concrete retaining wall. Had we had another 2 inches or so on that wall, we wouldn't have had a lake in the Allendale division. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, so I can definitely attest that seeing it firsthand, had this elevation been there previously, we would hopefully be in a different situation than we ended up with back in 2008. Yeah, and adding to the city-county issue, if water were to back up into Thompson Ditch, flow out those floodgates, depending on the volume, that floodwater has a huge distance going south into the county that it can cover in a relatively short period of time. So it's somewhat a function of where that Thompson Ditch is located, and sort of out of our control as far as what area gets flooded and what area does not. But no, we have not gone to the city at this point in time.
Yeah, because I know a lot of the city flooded as well at that same time.
Mhm.
And so, and Thompson Ditch comes right through the city.
Right, yes it does.
So I just wonder, because when we get those are the kind of questions we get, is when we do take an action is, did you partner with the city?
Mm-hmm.
And then do they not have some benefit factor of this too? And then if we do this, and you said that people should still have flood insurance, I hope they would, because it's going to come.
Right.
But hopefully they get a lower rate.
Correct.
That's
the ultimate goal.
That's optimal. And I do appreciate the fact is you can't build in those areas unless we have those met, So I think it's a doable one. There's a lot, like you said, there's just a whole lot of information here. that we have.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, so hopefully, that's a great question, is I don't see any, do you have any contact that we have questions, and will you be back next week when we get ready to vote on this?
Yeah, we can send you guys all
Yeah.
Parker's contact information.
So I think if we can answer, some of us like to do some research in between the time it's presented until the time that we vote on it. So that's it.
Councilman Thacker, if you wanted to get a visual of how much dirt needs to be raised, Houston Automotive just went through that. Their new detail shop out back, if you drive by and take a look at it, they had to increase their dirt level by
Where
almost
was
4
this
feet. Houston Automotive.
yeah.
Because
I saw
of
that they built some.
the county's
tank.
ordinance in place, forced them to build up quite a bit and all new construction down there. So if you want to put eyes on it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you for that. A lot of good information.
Very good. Thank you very much.
He's already keeping that dirt. He don't want to give away that dirt. He you said there's dirt over on the S&G property. I said, yeah. No. So, okay, let me see what we have here. So the next one we have one additional one is, additional appropriation 2024-74, lit special purpose contractual services. And that is on page 28.
Good evening,
Yes,
council,
you're
once
on this
again. Mark Lincolnbeard, Vigo County Commissioner. If I could just add a couple quick points. Them not having the PowerPoint is my fault. I will get that emailed to you so that you can watch that. I just dropped the ball there and didn't get that done. Another thing that was so important, why we thought this was a good project, was how much acreage that opens up to development and housing. I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of acres there that we could use in the county that would be open for development. Okay, so last thing, I guess I'm the last one here on this. This is regarding cure room in the courthouse. Earlier this year, the council appropriated $50,000 in ARPA funds for the construction of 2 secure rooms in the courthouse. So when they transport them in, or if they need to go to lunch or whatever, or during a recess, they can put those the inmates in those 2 rooms. What fell through the cracks was cameras and card swipes, and that's what this $12,462 is requesting. And they actually they wanted a couple additional card swipes inside the room and not just at the outside. So just to also let you know, you also appropriated roughly $38,000 for dome repair and painting. That is both complete, and we have approximately $6,716.54 left of that if we, that will go back into the ARPA fund that, we could possibly use for that as a portion of that.
6,700.
6,700. 6,700. So that, what we requested for the dome was roughly $138,000, and we were under budget by $6,716.
So
That was just FYI. So
and
that
then
you know.
I said that's on page 28 because I looked at it, but some of the information starts on page 20 on that is where you asked for that. But we looked at it earlier. It's really hard to see on 21 through 24 some of that information. It just seems a little, and for us that may not be aware of it, card readers and cameras, $12,000 for those 2 closets. That's basically what they are, right?
To run wiring to all those, and it's not just, was not there readily available. So I would agree it seems expensive, but I mean, I don't do that for a living, so. We trusted Jeff Fox to handle that for us, and he did. So I do trust Jeff, and he knows what he's doing.
For sure.
And those rooms are complete. We're waiting on glass for both of them, and then they'll be operational.
The benches are in?
Pardon me?
Are the benches installed?
Benches are installed, yes. Everything else is
Last time I was
done.
over there, they didn't have any benches in them yet.
Do you want to go try them out?
No, I trust you. I'm just asking your
All
word.
right.
Yeah.
Do it overnight.
I don't want to do it unless we have cameras.
Yeah, yeah.
So that'll be the next time when Marie says she's not going to ask any questions, I'll wager that. Thank you.
I always look forward to Marie's questions, so it's all good.
I don't have any on this.
Mr. Norris, it looks like you were wanting to say
I do.
something.
Commissioner Klinkenbeard, what was the initial amount of ARPA money that we gave you to do that project?
$50,000.
$50,000. Originally, yes, yeah. The bid was 49.9 something or whatever, and you appropriated $50,000.
Any other questions? Yeah, just seeing if anybody had any questions. Not, then I appreciate that information. Let me see what else we have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time is if we have any public comment. Is there any public comment? Those 12 of you left? Okay. No public comment. and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made, second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 6:06.
Thank you.
Yes.